This is the Generation Report. I am Paul Zimmy Finn. Hope you're doing well. In 1989, a few months before the fall of the Berlin Wall, the political scientist and economist Francis Fukuyama published an article in the national security journal The National Interest. Its main conclusion was that the decline of the Soviet Union and the communist satellite states of Eastern Europe, then ongoing, had marked the ultimate triumph of political and economic liberalism in its long battle with competing ideologies. The title Fukuyama gave to his now famous article was "The End of History?" with a question mark. But rather than leave the question unanswered, Fukuyama confidently asserted that a future of liberal democratic consensus was approaching which would usher in a kind of homeostasis for both America and the world. He wrote, "The willingness to risk one's life for an abstract goal, the worldwide ideological struggle that called forth daring, courage, imagination, and idealism, will be replaced by economic calculation, the endless solving of technical problems, environmental concerns, and the satisfaction of sophisticated consumer demands. There will be neither art nor philosophy, just the perpetual caretaking of the museum of human history." I turned 4 years old the year Fukuyama wrote those words, and the attitudes he expressed then have both shaped and reflected the dominant approaches to history throughout my lifetime. Like a museum piece that gathers dust, the past has been treated as something to judge from a sense of distance. Like a game with an outdated set of rules, the sobering lessons of the past have seemingly been cast aside whenever convenient. Where once history was generally judged for its own merits and to bring understanding, now it is overwhelmingly used as an instrument to display strength in abstract thinking, to generate self-righteousness, and to bring reassurance when necessary. The dominance of these approaches has been so complete for so long that to challenge them in any way brings skepticism and not a small amount of indignation. In going against this dominant orthodoxy about history, the generational theory of Strauss and Howe and their 1997 bestseller, The Fourth Turning, invariably face an uphill battle for acceptance and recognition. The true extent of how pronounced that uphill battle is, however, was seldom more in evidence than in the reaction to what occurred at the Capitol on January 6th. As I've mentioned before, the playwright behind Heroes of the Fourth Turning, Will Arbory, is on the record as professing he does not believe in Strauss and Howe's ideas. Fair enough. However, in an interview after January 6th which focused on how heroes had seemed to foretell an event such as the Capitol riot was coming, Arbory never addressed where the ideas expressed in his play by his characters had originated. Perhaps more tellingly, his interviewer never asked. Among the questions the interviewer did ask, however, were these. Have you noticed any changes in the discourse, or is everyone just reverting back to their ramparts? Do you think any of your heroes' characters would have joined this mob? Hard-hitting journalism. The week after the riot, when historical documentarian Ken Burns was asked to offer his thoughts on the current moment by Politico, he said the following. The story of our democratic experiment is perhaps best told through our naders, of which there are many. Last week, many asked whether the assault on the Capitol was the start of something or an end. It is neither, of course. It is a moment when we each get to decide how we want to proceed. History does not unfold in cycles. We are not condemned to repeat what we do not remember. Our world is too chaotic for those simplistic ideas. What we recognize in history is a combination of fact and myth, often at war with one another. And finally, when Francis Fukuyama himself was asked about the moment and his famous idea by Foreign Policy magazine just before the inauguration, he offered these thoughts. The end of history may not be one form of government, but it may be the eternal return to the same, meaning that we've actually thought through and tried out all the different variants from democratic to authoritarian government. What the end of history is a perpetual recycling through these different variants. So maybe the end of history is a perpetual kind of running around like a squirrel on a treadmill. Where do sentiments like these lead us in our understanding of current events or of history? The same place a treadmill leads, nowhere. If history has become a domain where context is sought by asking questions about fictional characters in a play, and where fancy abstractions form the only basis needed to predict or explain anything, then we are reaching the end of history now in 2021. But it isn't an end of the kind Francis Fukuyama envisioned more than 3 decades ago. It's the end of history as anything which is tangible, insightful, or remotely meaningful. Thankfully, there is still an alternative. If you enjoy this content, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone important to you. Thank you for listening, and may God bless America.